Welcome to Frog Talk, an Auction Frogs podcast series all about events and fundraising in a post-2020 world. For more information on Auction Frogs and the services we offer, visit auctionfrogs.org today.
Welcome to another edition of Frog Talk, your leap into fundraising. I'm Corey Michaels, and today the guest on Frog Talk is one of my favorite people on the planet, an exciting young auctioneer, but don't let her age fool you. We had a chance to chat a couple of months ago on Frog Talk, and I'm always excited to have her on here again with me, Anna the Auctioneer. Anna, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
You know what? Doing awesome. It's always better when I get a chance to be able to chat with you. Today, actually, Anna had contacted us, and we had done one of the episodes, if you remember a while back, Alicia and I had talked about some of the fundraising fails, some of the pitfalls to try and avoid, things like that. And we were planning on extending that series because there's so much that, you know, in all of our years, and now with Anna on the phone, I think we're up around 150, 160 years of fundraising experience combined, all of us. You know, it means that we've either seen or made the mistakes ourselves, and we want you to be able to avoid those things. We want you to have the smoothest, best event possible, and especially as we're finally into being able to start having some live events again.
Right, absolutely. And I think there's so many things that can go wrong that you just don't think about. You know, everybody prepares so well for their events, and then there's always that kind of unexpected twist that can happen and really kind of, you know, mess up your night a little bit. But the more events we do, the more we kind of can prepare for kind of that unexpected thing that could possibly go wrong.
Absolutely. Now, what are some of the big ones that you've seen? Because I know I've seen a lot over the years, and some minor, some major, and everything in between.
Well, actually, my very first auction went a little bit awry. I was only 19 years old. I was still in college. I was a sophomore at USC, and it was my first auction. They didn't know it was my first auction because I hadn't told them that. And it was an event. It was this gorgeous event, and it was at a private residence. And they decided to have the event outside. But what happened, as is something that happens very frequently in events, the program went a little bit longer than they were expecting. Which is super common. A lot of times, clients will send you their run of show, and you can always just in your head maybe push that back. But I would say about on average 15 minutes or so. Well, this program was running pretty late, and the event, like I said, was outside, and they had no lighting outside.
Oh.
So the original plan was that we were supposed to be doing the live auction at about 6 p.m. when the sun was still going to be high and I could see all of the beautiful people in the crowd. But unfortunately, this event was running pretty late. And so by the time I started the live auction, the sun had already set and it was pretty dark. So I had a pretty difficult time seeing people. And like I said, this was my very first event. And we decided to do this really fun warm-up item called First Out Ballet, which is something that I think is always like warm-up items I think are really fun. They usually get people kind of in that auction mood. And for First Out Ballet, what you do is you go and you find a ballet guy and you say, okay, when we start the auction, I'd like you to come up on stage with me. And we're going to auction off the opportunity to leave before everybody else. So that ballet guy is going to go collect the ticket of the winner of the auction, and he's going to have your car waiting for you, so you don't have to wait in that, you know, half an hour ballet line. You can go home, kiss your kids, say hi to your dog, way before everybody else does that.
Great idea.
Yeah, and it's super fun. It's something that I learned from my wonderful mentor, Clint Bell. And I was very nervous because this was the first ever live auction item I'd ever auctioned off. And it's starting to get dark and I'm having a difficult time seeing everybody. And so I start doing the patter. You start out pretty low at maybe around $50. And I'm doing, you know, I've got a $50 bidder. I'm looking for a $100 bidder, $100 bidder. Now I'm going to go $150. And I'm doing that fast patter. And all of a sudden this woman stands up and goes, "Stop, stop, stop." And I was like, "What is going on? Yes, how can I help you?" And she said, "I want to sell you something. You would be perfect for one of my sons.
Oh, gee.
I'll donate so much money right now if you marry my son."
Oh, my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Not
and
a
it was
date.
in front of about, what? I'm sorry?
Not a date. Marriage.
Not a date. If you marry my son, I will donate right now. And I said, "Thank you so much for that offer. Why don't we discuss it after the auction? I really appreciate you reaching out." And then I continued on with the rest of the live auction.
Now, how did
And I think I'm sorry?
how did the rest of it go now that you're in dark? You've been trying to be married off at this point. What possibly is going through your night? I mean, that would be a tough situation for someone who had been doing it for years.
Right.
When it's your very first auction, how'd you recover on that one?
Well, the hardest thing was to try to figure out the bid number that I was at. I was so flummoxed that I was like, "Oh my goodness, where were we? What number were we at?" And I don't even know if I started back on the right one, but I just kind of tried to keep it moving. And then by the time I think we got halfway through the live auction, it was pitch black outside. I couldn't see anything. But I was saved by this really wonderful group of ladies. It was a charitable girls group, and there were 25 of these little girls that were spotters at that event. And they were running around, and they did an amazing job in the dark, getting everybody, making sure I had the right paddle numbers, making sure during the raise the paddle, I was saying they got all the paddle numbers, the ones that I couldn't see, and they were really, really wonderful. And they totally saved me. And then I got through the auction, and that woman came up to me and her husband, and they said, our sons are actually really wonderful and normal if you're interested.
Well, good for you, because that's the one thing I will say. In all of the times that I have been on stage over the last 35 years, weird stuff happens. And most of the time, see how you feel about this, but in my experience, no matter what the event is, things are going to go wrong. Now, are they things that anyone is going to notice besides you as the executive director or the event chair or whatever it is? You're the only one that knows most of the time that something's not on track, that it's not going right. So you smile, and even if it's something like that happens, people are there for the cause. They're there, and they're going to be usually understanding when little things out of your control happen, like, doing an auction in the dark. And so the more you can just smile and have fun with it, and they're going to smile and have fun with it along with you, and they're usually willing to forgive those type of things. And so just don't stress about it. That's the biggest thing I can tell people, is that's when things really go wrong, is when you have a board or a group that just melts down because something didn't go right. That's going to be completely counterproductive for what you're trying to do in raising funds. So that's my little bit of advice on that part.
Absolutely. And I think, that is the biggest difference between having a professional auctioneer and having, maybe a volunteer who's not as used to being on stage and used to kind of handling the crazy things that can happen in an auction. Because I've been doing this for about 5 years now, and I've seen so many things go wrong. And I'm very comfortable with that environment now. I'm very go with the flow, and I'm very, you can throw anything at me on stage and I will make it work. And, nowadays I actually just had a conference call with a client who's doing their event outside. And I always say, hey, make sure you have some lights out there just in case we run a bit long. We want to make sure we can see all of those incredible donations coming in.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, the other thing along those same lines, and I'm sure you've had this one happen too, when a group, you've gotten your venue, and so they had been told by the venue, oh, yeah, we have AV, we have audiovisual, no problem.
Yep.
Here's the thing. always make sure of that, because there's this one venue, beautiful, gorgeous venue, but it's all marble and tile, and I'm just pristine, beautiful place, but it's also a big echoey cave. And they had told this nonprofit, oh yeah, we've got audio visual, we've got sound. Well, luckily I went out like 3 days beforehand to test that theory, and no, they had like a Bose speaker that was set in a corner for like 300 people. Well, you couldn't hear anything. So luckily that's the biggest thing. Don't try and save money on your auctioneer, on your MC, or on your audiovisual. That's not to say you have to get the most expensive of everyone, but make sure you have pros that are doing it, because just like Anna, yes, she's on stage, something goes wrong, she's going to be able to guide you through it. If I'm emceeing an event, something goes wrong, I'm going to go with the flow, and we're going to get back on track, and everything's going to be fine, and everyone's going to be happy. Audio visual, there's not a lot you can do with that, same as lighting. If you don't have it, you're losing money. Money's going to be left on the table, and that's the last thing we want. So make sure of those things.
And I think as auctioneers, we've all encountered kind of a situation where the audiovisual wasn't ideal, and it does make a difference. I mean, you can try to adapt to that situation. I did an incredible auction for an amazing charity in a brewery, and it was this really fun night, but the audiovisual was not very good in the brewery, and there was a lot of kind of people talking, and there wasn't necessarily a stage. And I ended up doing the entire auction in heels on a bar table so that I could be a little bit more centrally located. And, you know, people could hear me a little bit better even without the microphone. And it ended up being a ton of fun, but, you know, you definitely that's not the situation that you necessarily want. You kind of want that better audio visual.
I had one when it was an outside event, and they said, oh yeah, no, we've got something for you for, you know, the microphone and everything. And I'm like, uh-huh. So now I went against my first rule of always making sure what that is, and I show up to the event. There's 500 people out here for this walk and fundraiser, and they hand me one of the bullhorns.
Oh my gosh!
With like the little with like the little CB thing and the big bullhorn you hold in your hand, and that's what I had to do a 3-hour event with. We made fun of it, or I made fun of it. We laughed about it, and you make it through. But trust me, that is not ideal. Don't do that to the professionals that you hire trying to help you raise money.
It is not ideal. And I mean, any kind of microphone is a good microphone, but I always joke whenever they have those kind of, that Britney Spears mic.
Oh, yeah.
I always joke that I look like Tony Robbins. And I always tell people that I'm not there to try to sell them on changing their life. I'm just there to try to sell them on a trip to Maui.
So, yeah, it's just like with us. Just go with the flow. And that's why we're there, and why you've hired these people, whoever you're hiring, wherever you happen to be, where you're listening. Just make sure and find that person, because Anna had brought it up earlier. You know, I'm sure that your executive director is a wonderful, wonderful, passionate human being. That doesn't mean they're a master of ceremonies. That's great for them to come up and say a few words, because they are passionate about that, but they need to be out there shaking hands as long as we can do that, or you know what I mean, getting in front of the donor base. That's your job. Let other people do the job that's keeping everything going on the stage there. And, you know, also the other one that I've seen in a lot, and I'm sure you have too, Anna, is your keynote speaker. Now, professional keynote speakers, they are right on it. If they say they're doing a 15-minute keynote speech or 10-minute or whatever it is, that's that's pretty much what it's going to be, give or take a few seconds. But again, when you get I had one where this wonderful older gentleman who had been there from the starting of this nonprofit, and he was the one to come up and talk right before we got into the live auction. So you're trying to build momentum. And bless him, he was older, had a few too many cocktails because, well, he was nervous to get up there. And all of a sudden, he went on for like 20 minutes. We literally I had to go up on stage, and finally it's like, it's so wonderful to have you up here. As soon as I got to pause and escort him off, because it was just going south quick. People were falling asleep in their chairs. So just make sure of the momentum and the flow of your run of show.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big one. And sometimes you get, that funny kind of thing where you do have people that go on and on and on. And then suddenly your executive director is looking up at you like,
do something.
You need to get them off the stage, like do something. And it's like, well, I don't have a giant hook. We're not in vaudeville. So you have to kind of subtly go up there and go, wow, thank you so much for sharing with us today. And kind of make that subtle, okay, and we're moving on now.
Yeah, because then trying to get the energy back into a room once all the energy has been sucked out of the room, especially right before the live auction, that's just a killer for your revenue coming in.
Oh, absolutely. And I have this kind of crazy story in regards to that. I was doing an auction in Los Angeles, and it was for once again an amazing charity, and their executive director was a phenomenally good public speaker. And he could just go up and extemporaneously speak really beautifully and concisely. And it's kind of your dream charity to work with. It's an honor to work with executive directors like that. They were presenting awards. They did 4 awards that night. And during the 3rd award, this older couple were walking to the bathroom, and the older woman, she tripped and fell and hit her head.
Oh, goodness.
Yes. And it was awful. It was absolutely awful. She ended up being totally fine. I was able to check in. But she didn't lose consciousness, but nobody was seeing it happen because it was happening behind the tables, and everyone was looking up at the front at the person giving the speech. But the executive director and I are seeing this happen. And I said, what should we do? Should we stop and pause the show, or should we keep going? And he said, let's wait and finish the awards, and then we'll take a break after the awards. And so as this last award recipient, who is a 16-year-old boy, is giving his acceptance speech, the paramedics are coming in and putting this woman on a stretcher and taking her out on an ambulance. And now people are obviously starting to notice. And this poor kid is up there making an acceptance speech. And I was like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And so we took oh my gosh, that poor kid. He did phenomenally well. He is a future MC auctioneer in the making.
There you go.
And we decided after this to take a 10-minute break before we started the live auction. But this woman who had gone to the hospital, who once again, totally fine, ended up being completely fine. She was sitting at the major donor table. And so in the 10-minute break, all of the major donors left to go and visit their friend at the hospital and check in on her to make sure she was okay. And so the executive director came back into the room, and he gave this beautiful speech that really brought back the energy into the room. And then I started the live auction. Well, the live auction items were geared towards that major donor table. So all of the live auction items were starting out at around the $10,000 to $15,000 mark. Well, nobody else in the room had that kind of money, and all of the major donors had left. So I think we had maybe 2 bids on 2 different items that night, and nobody bid on anything else. And it was just me up there doing probably 20 minutes of stand-up comedy is what it turned into. And it is one of those situations where you do kind of want a professional in that environment. But it just kind of goes to show that you really have to have backup items to make sure that it's accessible to the majority of your crowd and not just those major donors. And obviously, only a certain fraction of people at an event participate in the live auction.
Oh, yes.
But the larger fraction that you can get, the more fun that the auction becomes. Because auctions are really fun when you get a good bid war going on.
Oh, of course.
And the higher the participation you have, the more fun that it is. And so if you're starting it is great to have some items in there that are worth a lot more and can be really fun. But if the majority of your items are at that level, you're not going to be getting as much participation. So if you have kind of items that are around the median range of what people want to spend, then it becomes more fun. Then you get more participation. Then you can encourage these really fun bidding wars between people. And that's what makes, an auction really fun. And it's definitely what makes my job really fun. Although I can absolutely and will enjoy doing 20 minutes of stand-up comedy, that's not necessarily what everybody wants.
Anna, it's always so good to get to catch up. We're going to have to do this again. We'll have you back on for another episode of Frog Talk coming up real soon, and we'll go over some more tips and tricks and things to avoid and just ways to be able to make your experience the best possible for your donor base and for your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's always good to chat with you.
We will talk soon. And thank you so much for joining us for this episode, along with Anna, the auctioneer. Find out more about Anna and get more advice. You need a great auctioneer. She travels, so she can come to you. You can find out all her details in the description here of the episode. And we'll join you again with the next episode of Frog Talk, your leap into fundraising.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Frog Talk, an Auction Frogs podcast series all about events and fundraising in a post-2020 world. For more information on Auction Frogs and the services we offer, visit auctionfrogs.org today.